wrap up the week on Friday, February 3rd. Just Baseball Show, the three of us, Jack, Peter, Aram. We finally did a mailbag again. It's been a couple of months since we did a mailbag, no?
Yeah, it's been the last mailbag was during the postseason in October. We haven't done one in the entire offseason yet.
Okay, this is our off-season mailbag. Hopefully we'll do another one during spring training or something. I'm sure we'll do a bunch during the regular season, but this is nice. And you guys showed out on Twitter and Instagram asking questions. So we've got 11 that we're going to run through, and you're going to get our thoughts on all of it when it comes to prospects. Which Brewers prospect is going to come up and make the biggest impact? I saw Jackson Chourio was mentioned in that. Aram, is Jackson Chourio going to come up and make an impact this year?
No.
Okay, so we can talk about all the other ones. From that to an all-star team of all the crappiest teams, can they beat the Houston Astros? We have no idea. But first and foremost, we're getting closer to World Baseball Classic season. And I was just messing around on Baseball Reference, and I saw that it was this Japanese sensation's 23rd birthday, right? Murakami. This kid, Manetaka Murakami. This kid, if you haven't seen his Baseball Reference page, if you haven't seen what he has done in Nippon professional baseball at age 19, 20, 21, 22, again, he just turned 23. This guy hit 56 nukes as a 22-year-old in the second best, highest level league in the world. He might be craziness for Team Japan, no?
I'm so glad you mentioned him because I am the most excited to watch him out of any player in the World Baseball Classic.
I'm excited for Sasaki.
I'm excited for Sasaki too, and I assume that Sasaki is a better prospect just because he's been a phenom and he's even younger than Murakami is. But the reason I'm so excited is because I feel like he's going under the radar here. He beat Sadaharu O's record for home runs in a single season as a 22-year-old, and he plays a good third base. I just feel like nobody knows about him, and they will in the World Baseball Classic. Well, I feel like the greater baseball community has heard of Roki Sasaki, right, Aram?
Yeah, I think he gets a little bit more. I think Sasaki kind of broke in. I know we've mentioned him the last couple episodes.
That perfect
ninja,
game.
Perfect game
with the 20 strikeout perfect
really
game.
and then pitching ninja grabbed on, and when you have just the idea of 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, it just seems to kind of get a little bit more fanfare. But I think Murakami is going to have one of those majestic home runs that goes viral. That's going to kind of get on everybody's radar because now they're playing in stadiums that we've seen, MLB players playing. So you'll be able to see wait, guys don't hit it up there very often. I'm thinking about Marlins Park in the semifinal, quarterfinal, when Murakami puts it halfway up the upper deck in right field. People are going to be like, whoa, I haven't really seen anybody do that. And looking at Murakami's data, 117-mile-per-hour home run he hit this past year as a 22-year-old. So if he gets us one of those in the World Baseball Classic, I can promise everybody's going to know who this guy is. So I'm excited about that.
And just to quickly put 117 in perspective, I would say 12 big leaguers can do that. Is that fair?
The only guys that hit 117-mile-an-hour home runs this year were Judge, Stanton, Alonso, and Yordan Alvarez. And I think
Schwarber. I think Schwarber got one.
In the postseason,
yes.
It was 117. That home run that had Bryce Harper's jaw on the floor, that was a 117 home run, and that's what Murakami can do.
So I even over-exaggerated using 12.
Yeah,
that's how fast it is. That's how good he could be.
Yes,
correct. Yeah. Now I was looking at the odds for the World Baseball Classic in a lot of sports books today, and I think I saw the DR is plus 200, the US is plus 250, and then Japan is plus 350, and then it's everybody else. It feels like it's the DRs to lose, even though Luis Castillo and Jerry DiPoto both said that Luis Castillo will be in spring training. He is not throwing for the Dominican Republic. So as of right now, that rotation looks like Sandy, Framber Valdez, Christian Javier, and either Freddie Peralta or a Johnny Cueto if you want a wily vet. Not too bad.
We're going to have so many episodes just based on the World Baseball Classic. That's why we're still waiting for the entire rosters to be announced. We can't give all the gold away so quickly, Jack.
Sorry.
Also, speaking of giving away a little bit of gold here, we missed one more 118 mile an hour home run. O'Neal Cruz to
Yeah.
Corbin Burns 118, 437 feet back in I believe it was August. So that's a freaking tank too, off of one of the best in the game. We were just talking about this an episode ago, most valuable pitches in baseball. Well, O'Neal Cruz took one of the most valuable pitches in baseball, 118 miles an hour to right field. So that shows you what he's capable of.
And he's not going to crack the lineup for the DR, folks. We shall see.
Yeah.
I mean, wild. All right, let's jump into the mailbag here. Number one comes from Instagram from Xander Trallins. He said, if there was a most improved player award for Major League Baseball, who would be your way too early picks? Peter, you first.
So I picked one in the American League and one in the National League. My first one in the American League, I think I'm going with Spencer Torkelson. I just believe in the bat. Like, if you believe in the bat, is he a 600 OPS guy? Could he be an 800 OPS guy? Like, in terms of the biggest jumps in OPS, he's got it in the tank. It was that horrible year where the Tigers just weren't competitive. Aram, Jack, you guys have spoken about this on the call up and on the Just Baseball show. The development with the Tigers, I feel like with a full offseason and kind of work back into it, that he's going to be much better. Remember, he was one of the top overall picks in the draft, one of the top prospect. He was my rookie of the year favorite last year. Just a really bad season. I was trying to decide between him and Riley Green, and I went with the guy who was way worse because Riley Green's at 683 OPS. We expect him to be much better. But Spencer Torkelson had a 604 OPS with like a 319 slugging percentage. I just don't see that happening. So I'm going to go with him in the American League. In the National League, talk about buying stock when it's at its lowest. I think Jesse Winker is going to be decent for the Brewers. I really do, because he couldn't have been worse last year. So he's either going to be out of the league or he's going to improve. And I think we forget that with the Reds, this guy was an all-star level hitter. And I think the Brewers are going to platoon him enough. You know, we're going to talk about the Brewers prospects that are coming up. Like, if you just get Jesse Winker against righties in a tiny stadium, I still think he's going to be able to hit. He crushed fastballs in 2021, didn't hit him at all in 2022. That's got to revert back. So I'm going Torkelson in the AL and Jesse Winker in the National League.
Good picks. Aram?
Yeah, so I'm afraid I might be taking yours here, Jack, but I'm going to go in the American League. Also, Riley Green was one that I was down to the wire with, but again, I like kind of what Peter said. He wasn't that bad. It wasn't great. We expected more, but he was a rookie playing the outfield, playing some center, and had a 680 OPS. It could have been worse. I'm going to go with Andrew Vaughn, who wasn't bad at all last year, who's actually slightly above average by WRC plus, but his F4 was negative because he was playing the outfield. Now he's going to go to first. And I think Vaughn, with this White Sox team, there's going to be a little bit more, I think, expected of him. And I think he's going to rise to that occasion. And I'm going to say most improved because I think he's going to go from a negative WAR guy to somebody that's going to play good defense at first, someone that's going to hit close to 30 home runs this year. I really think he can. I think he's going to hit for average. I think this guy could end up being an all-star caliber bat. And finally, you know, with a little bit of consistency, he was banged up. He was asked to do things that he's never really done that wears down your body. And I think he's going to really thrive in a much more limited, physically demanding role at first base versus the outfield. And he can focus more on just raking, which is what he was drafted to do. He wasn't drafted to play the outfield. He was drafted to rake. That's what it's all about with Andrew Vaughn. So I think he's going to have a really nice year this year. And I'm expecting him to break out in a big way.
How about National League? You got a guy?
I came with one guy. So I'm off of the top of my head in the National League. I really like the Winker pick because for all the reasons that Peter said there, another really hitter-friendly park that I think is going to treat him well. Come back to me. Say yours, and I'll have a National League guy ready to go.
That's fine. I had an American League guy that was not Andrew Vaughn. Like, Vaughn was obviously the first name that jumped to my mind, but if I did have to go with somebody else in the American League, I think it's Ryan Mountcastle, because we were expecting a lot more power than what we actually saw. And I can't place all of that on the wall being extended at Camden Yards. Like, the guy's got to figure it out, right? If you play for the Detroit Tigers, you have to figure out how to hit at Comerica. Miguel Cabrera won a Triple Crown there. If you're good, you're good. You can be good anywhere. I think Ryan Mountcastle's really good at hitting the ball really hard. And I think that he will figure out his home ballpark and have a really solid year. National League, I've got two guys. if Ian Anderson gets a shot in the starting rotation, he can't be worse than what he was. So I think that, you could look at a guy that has a 3.5 ERA and 140 innings and say, well, that's not most improved. It is from a 5 when he was optioned after several years of postseason success. And the other one is Alec Bohm. And we saw tastes of it this past year. I think Bohm can have a massive, massive breakout season because he's so well protected in that lineup, especially when you add Trey Turner to the fold as well.
I really like that Mountcastle pick. Kind of a cool way to see batted ball data, like the luck factor of it is to compare your WOBA to your ex-WOBA. And Ryan Mountcastle was number 1 in that difference by those couple of stats, which of course isn't everything, but it's a cool thing that you can look at on Baseball Savant to see who was lucky or unlucky based on how hard they hit the ball. Ryan Mountcastle was number 1. And Javon was up there too. Torkelson was up there. Winker was up there. A lot of good picks, and I love the Ian Anderson play.
All right, Aram, you got a National League guy or no?
Yeah, I guess
okay
most improved in this case would be regaining the form, kind of like Peter said with Winker. I think Ketel Marte is going to do it this year. I think he's going to have some life kind of injected back into him. This is a team that I know they're not expected to compete, but I think they're going to be just much more fun and have life and have some outside shot at a wild card, which I think is going to be refreshing for a Ketel Marte who has played on a team that has been just perpetually bad and has not played for much and has been banged up. He didn't have the best year last year, but at the end of the day, he was still all right. And I think now not being asked to play center field as much, getting more acclimated to other areas, not having to play the outfield much at all. And I think having opportunities to drive in more runs, right? There was points in time where he was like really the only guy you were worried about in that lineup. Now there's a lot of dudes that you have to worry about in that lineup. And there's going to be guys on base a lot more. I think Marte is going to bounce back to form because he's not old. Like he's still relatively young. He should be able to, his body shouldn't be breaking down on him. If he can stay healthy, I think he could have a really big year.
Love it.
And he's the forgotten man going into this year, right? We have
Which is wild.
We have all these conversations about Corbin Carroll, and then it's like, oh, well, Carroll and Alec Thomas, who's primed for a bounce back, and all these young arms are joining a team with Gallen and Merrill Kelly, and how about Christian Walker and like Gabby Moreno? Oh my God. Ketel Marte might be the 7th name that you pluck for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he may be the best. Like he may be 1 or 2 in terms of FWAR this year. So we'll see. All right, next one. Which team has the most amount of MLB-ready prospects that will be called up by October? This is from Big Nate 2144 on Instagram. I don't want to see what he did to Little Nate 2043, but we shall see, right? I think Baltimore is the clear answer here because you've got all these guys. Grayson Rodriguez is probably going to be in the opening day rotation. Gunnar Henderson, the number 1 prospect or number 2 prospect of the game, in whatever publication you look at, is going to be on the opening day roster. Then you got guys ready like Westberg and Norby and Kauser and DL Hall. Like there are so many. So Baltimore is the clear answer. I will say the Dodgers as well, because a lot of their top 10 guys, top 15 guys are knocking on the door, whether they're AAA bats like a Michael Busch or a Miguel Vargas, who's going to be on the opening day roster, or an Andy Pages or a James Outman. You also have the AA guys like a Landon Knack and a Nick Nastrini joining Bobby Miller and Gavin Stone. I think and Ryan Pepio. Think about Pepio. I think that they're going to get a lot of production from younger guys.
Another one that I wouldn't sleep on, that is also kind of one of the questions we're going to get to in a minute with the specific Brewer prospect question, but there's a lot of guys that are ready for the Brewers. And, Turang's probably going to start, Bryce Turang at second base. Sal Frelick's knocking on the door. He raked in AAA. Joey Weimer's knocking on the door. He raked in AAA. Robert Gasser, who they acquired in that Josh Hader deal, is a lefty that I think is pretty close to big league ready and could be in the bullpen or in a starting role if they need him there. And then they've got other guys that can plug into the bullpen, other prospects that I like there. So this is another team that could mix and match in a lot of ways. And even Garrett Mitchell's technically still a prospect. I believe he didn't lose his rookie eligibility. So that's another guy that technically counts towards this. The Brewers have a lot of close to big league or big league ready prospects that I think are going to play a big part in what they're doing this year, especially if some guys get hurt, especially if some guys struggle. And a lot of these guys I'm really excited about in our top 100 caliber dudes.
So I power rank myself number 3 by a long shot in terms of talking about prospects on this podcast. But what I will say is the only team that I could bring in also is the Guardians. Obviously Espino coming off that injury, George Valera, possibly Gavin Williams, Brian Rocchio, Bo Naylor, guys like that. I feel like could make an impact for the Guardians too. They're just a young team who, Will Brennan, even we saw him have a little cameo last year. A lot of really good dudes in that farm.
Yeah, and they've also showed us that they're not scared to bring anybody up, right? Like Gabriel Arias, they gave him a shot for a couple days and he stunk, so they sent him right back down. And like we saw Hunter Gaddis come up, and then Xavier Curry come up, and then a Pilkington come up, and did Battenfield come up at the end of the year? I have no idea, but like, yeah, you had a Bo Naylor for a brief
moment. Arias started playoff games alongside Will Brennan. I mean, like those guys were both in the lineup facing Garrett Cole. Like they're fearless with it. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, they're not scared at all. All right, number 3. If any player could redo their major league career, who would you want to see? Logan Smith 10 on Instagram. I've got a very clear answer. I can save it for last, or I can go first.
I got 2 New York guys. I can already guess which one Aram will have. Whatever. You're the host, Jack. Point guard us.
Peter.
Perfect. My first one, both are New York based because I'm a New York Yankees fan and we go to Citi Field all the time. So I centered mine around New York because I assumed these two would go a different direction. My first one is Thurman Munson with the Yankees. Died in a plane crash tragically. He was the Yankee captain before Derek Jeter, and he kind of goes underrated among catchers in MLB history. He only really played for about 10 seasons, but compiled 46 WAR, well above average hitting catcher, really, really good defender. Of course, I never got to see him in person because he was huge for the Yankees in those 1970s years. But when I was working at the Yankees for 2 seasons, that name was one of the names that, you don't think about when you think about Yankee lore, when you think about Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and all these different guys. But the way the Yankees treat Thurman Munson and the attention to detail they have about him throughout his career, one of the greatest catchers of all time, and just tragically passed away at the age of 32.
So here's what I'll tell you. Out on the Cape, in the Cape Cod Baseball League, nobody's talked about more than Thurman Munson.
Good.
Not even close.
Yeah. So he's one of them. Another one on the Mets side, David Wright is a player that I was doing some deep dives into. And he had a career, right? He played 14 seasons, but the only issue that the last 4 really were just, he was damaged. Like he was just injured the entire time. But, I queued up his stats from between like 2005 to around 2012, like that peak of his, he was at like basically a 300, 390, 505 slash line guy with great defense. Like I was looking through, he had 8 WAR seasons, 7 WAR seasons, 6 WAR, 5 WAR. It's just a guy who combined defense with elite offensive production. I think if he stayed healthy throughout his career, he would have been these first ballot third baseman Hall of Fame guys. Like I thought he was that good at his peak, but injuries just killed him at the end. Like he never put together anything, and then he was out of the league. And we had this amazing peak, and that was kind of it for him. So New York-based Thurman Munson and David Wright for me.
Okay. Aram, you got one?
There's like so many that come to my mind. Obviously, like a Jose Fernandez is obvious, right? I mean, but that's something that I like it. That's almost do life over in a way. Like that's kind of beyond the baseball field. But Albert Bell is somebody that I really feel like doesn't get enough appreciation in terms of what his peak was like. And Jeff Conine on Outside the Box has brought up Albert Bell a lot, and he always tells me about how Albert Bell is one of the most talented players he has ever played with. Bell dealt with some issues in terms of just being able to like stay mentally there when it came to playing baseball. Struggled with like anger issues and had issues with his teammates at times. And he was just out of the league by 33. Like there was a lot of challenges for him. But at this guy's peak, let me read you his home run totals year after year after year. So 1991 first full season, he hits 28 home runs. Then he hits 34. Then he hits 38. Then he hits 36. Then he hits 50 Then he hits 48, 30, 49, 37. All of these seasons, he's playing pretty good defense. He's stealing bases. He's hitting for average. The one year he hit 357 with 36 pumps back in 94. So, I mean, this guy was nuts. 50 homers, 317. Niner always tells me that this is one of the most insane players that he's ever played with in terms of talent. He also walked more than he struck out in a lot of these seasons. Albert Bell is a guy that if we saw him play his whole career, Jeff said without a doubt Hall of Famer. So for me, I'll back that up. I totally agree. I think without a doubt would have been a Hall of Famer. Another one is Mark Pryor, because Mark Pryor is a name that everyone knows, right? He was so good, but like I don't know if how many people realize that Mark Pryor barely played. Like Mark Pryor barely played. Maybe
it was like 5 years.
I thought it was like 3 seasons.
Legitimately played 2 full seasons, parts of 4, and it would average out to about 3. And he was out by the time he was 25. What's crazy is if you look at Mark Pryor's best season in 2003, 7.8 FWAR. He had a 2.43 ERA in 211 innings. This guy would have been perpetually one of the best pitchers in baseball, would have been a Cy Young candidate every single year. And instead, the last season we really saw of him was at age 24. That's one that I do think about a lot when I hear Mark Pryor. I'm like, man, what could he have been?
So those Cubs years were like what my initial introduction to baseball was. I was born, in Chicago, grew up in Lincoln Park. I was a 10-minute walk from Wrigley at an apartment that I was at age 0 through 5. Like I've got a photo hanging in my childhood bedroom of my first Cubs game in a Sammy Sosa onesie in 1999. And I guarantee you, my parents would not have introduced me to baseball at the level of vigor that they did had it not been for the tandem of Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor. Because that's what made them good. Yeah. Like, obviously, they had Sosa and Aramis Ramirez and Moises Alou and Derek Lee at the time, but that offense is just an offense if you don't have Kerry freaking Wood and Mark freaking Pryor guiding them there. And 2003 was the Bartman year, right? Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood carried the Cubs to a possible avengement of the curse of the Billy Goat. And here we are with fucking Bartman getting in the way. So, yeah, man, I like that pick of Mark Pryor.
Derek Lee, Marlins legend. Right arm?
Yeah, Derek Lee.
The Baltimore Orioles legend, I think. Mine is clear as day. It's Bonds. 15 years in Major League Baseball before using PEDs. He had 2,100 hits. He had 494 home runs. He had 1,400 RBIs. He had 470 stolen bases. He was a career 290 hitter with a 412 OBP and a 979 career OPS, which put him right under McGuire, who we knew was cheating, and right above Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio. He had 3 MVPs, 8 Silver Sluggers, 8 Gold Gloves, 9 All-Star appearances. If Bonds didn't touch the shit, he's a top 10 player of all time. Now he's probably number 1, but he's got a fat ass asterisk right next to it. So I wish he didn't touch it.
Love that pick. I would have gone the same route. Want to see A-Rod, like Roger Clemens, a lot of these guys who were good, phenomenal top 50 all-time players, but then took steroids in order to be top 10 overall players. Yeah. And what would they have been if they didn't touch the juice?
So that's my thing. Like Clemens is probably top 50, but I think Bonds was like top 10. Yeah. And he turned himself from 8 to 1. I'm okay with 8 if you do it cleanly.
I think he almost had 100 WAR before he allegedly took steroids.
Correct. Balco dinged him for 2001 through 2006. So,
and he had like 99 WAR by then, which is like first ballot Hall of Famer easy.
110.1 by then.
By the end of the 2000 season. That's insane. By the way, I was looking at all-time OPS leaders here to see where Bonds would stack up. Aaron Judge has a 977 career OPS. That's the same as Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio. That's 1 point better than Stan Musial. We're watching an all-time great right now.
Hey, you got to survive the back half of the career. Imagine what if you cut Pujols off right around this time. What would that OPS look like? It would
probably number 1, right? Yeah. Number 1 or number 2.
Settle an argument between Jack and I because we had this where we were going over projections by Fangraphs, and they had Aaron Judge around 44. We don't have to go into it because we're going to do so much AL East previews. We're going to talk about each player, but just settle an argument for us. Aaron Judge projected 43 home runs, correct, Jack? 44
I
maybe?
thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 46, 47.
No, I think it was 44. Okay.
It was 44.
Over or under? Next year.
Man, that's tough.
Seems tough.
No, it's not tough.
I'll take the over, but it's tough. 44 is a lot.
Not
I'll take
for
the
Judge.
over. I don't think
he's
he's going to walk a ton. Like, I'll take the over, but I don't think he's breaking 50 this year.
I think he's breaking 60 again.
Oh, that'd be...
Okay. No, that's a good bet. You should
place that.
Yeah, you could punch me in the face if he does it at 60 home runs. That's like the
That's
I'm
what
like, hold on. That's more masochist than what I do. I say crazy things that won't happen, and I'm like, if they do, you can punch me in the face. I present that option a lot, which tells you that I'm not totally opposed to being punched in the face. But if you bet like, hey, if Judge hits less than 60, you get to deck my ass. I'm in. I'm cool with that.
Next question, please.
Next question. This comes from Twitter, AJ_Fama, FAMA. Who will be the biggest risers and fallers in the standings from last year to this year? American League, I've got a riser and a faller. I think the faller is Minnesota. I don't feel confident about it. 78 wins. Like, I just think they're running out a bunch of threes. And I'm done getting snake bitten by Minnesota. When I think they're going to be good, I'm like, fuck.
Now they're good. They're lock winning 85 games this year. I think more.
Shut up. And then Texas is obviously the team that's going to make a big jump, in my opinion, because they put their money where their mouth is there and they want to win games. Biggest faller in the National League. I said I don't think the Dodgers are going to be winning 100 games this year. They won 111 last year, so at least a 12-game, drop in win total. I'll take the Dodgers as the biggest faller. And then Aram, the Miami Marlins. I think they're going to win a lot more than 69 games. I thought you were going to say they were going to fall.
I was like, I get it.
No, I think Miami might be with a healthy Edward Cabrera to start the year, with a healthy Luzardo to start the year, with Trevor Rogers looking for a bounce back to start the year. It's hard to find a front four that's better than that.
Yeah, I mean, with Sandy really setting the pace there, it's going to be a good team. I'm interested to see in terms of like rotation wise. It's going to be a pretty good rotation. So I just, the problem is they drop like flies so quickly, right? Then Luzardo goes down, then Edward goes down, and then all of a sudden you've got Braxton Garrett as like your number 3, and that's usually how it goes. But no, I do think they're going to gain from 69. That was going to be one of my choices, especially with less divisional games. I do believe that. I think someone put a whole thread out on that. Like, I don't think they're going to be good, but I don't think a lot of other teams are going to change that much. Like, I think you look at the Cubs. I don't know how much better they're going to be than 74. Even some of the teams that I think take a step back, like the Dodgers, like, sure, okay, but they'll still win 100 games probably, or something close to it. The Padres aren't going to move much from 89. Giants aren't going to move from 81. So I think there's going to be a lot of the same. But I do think the Marlins gain a handful of wins, because not only do they add Arias, they get 120 games of Jazz. They add Gene Segura, who is probably one of their better hitters right away. They get a healthy Soler. So it should be interesting. On the American League side, it's really tough. I was looking at a few different teams. It's funny, Jack. I think I'm going to take the opposite of what you said. Like, I actually think the Twins gain. And I think the Twins actually put it together to a degree this year. Yeah, they're trotting out a lot of threes, but it's more threes than they were trotting out last year. And I think that says a lot, right? And I've mentioned this in the past. Like, if you're not going to be elite with your rotation, like if you're not going to have a classic ace, a 2, and then another 2, and then whatever, have 5 threes. And I think they're pretty close to that. Peter and I just talked about the best pitches. Joe Ryan's fastball is one of the best pitches. I think he's going to make another leap next year and continue to get better. And the lineup's good, man. Like, I think it's better than it was last year as these guys mature. So I know you're like, you said snake bitten. I'd say it's like a little bit of PTSD maybe from the Twins, but I think you're on the wrong side of it again this year. I think they're going to win 85, 86 games.
That's fine. I'll have the Twins be my kryptonite. I have no problem with that.
So the way I looked at it, I'm just going to choose one team that I think is the biggest riser, and then one team that's the biggest faller. Because you guys covered a lot of the teams that, I would talk about, but just 2 teams that we haven't spoken about yet. I think the Rays are going to win much more than 86 games. We saw them win 86 games with half their team. Full season of Shane, full season of Glasnow, full season again as Springs, Rasmussen in the rotation. They have a lockdown bullpen. They just extended Pete Fairbanks, who is also my mortal enemy, but I can understand that he's a good pitcher because he stares into my soul and he always crushes the Yankees, and we have the same name. So I have been coining him kind of my mortal enemy over the past 2 seasons, but he's a dog. So is Jason Adam. And then I think we're going to see a full season from Wander. They have tons of prospects like Josh Lowe, one of Arm's favorite guys. Like they have
Brandon
a great
Lowe.
System. And Brandon Lau. Yeah, another guy who's going to be back too. Brandon Lau, exactly. So I think the Rays are going to be very competitive this year. And I think they go from 86 to about 92, 93. Maybe even more. I think they have the potential to be one of the best teams in baseball. My biggest faller is the Cardinals. And a lot of things for the Cardinals went right to win 93 games. Will Paul Goldschmidt be an MVP again? Will Nolan Arenado put up the same exact season again? Because those two guys finished first and third in MVP voting. Do they do it again? Of course, they have the potential to, but history would say that they both don't finish in the top 3 of MVP voting again. Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was just going to say, so you've got Goldschmidt and Arenado up here, but think about all the young guys like Carlson, O'Neill, like they had underwhelming years. Like
Agreed.
They have options.
Agreed. And that's why I was picking like some of the best teams to go over, because you guys already mentioned the Dodgers. We haven't really talked about the NL East much outside of the Marlins kind of gaining wins, but I don't see that change. NL East really changing much. And this is also to say, I still think the Cardinals are going to win the division. I just think their win total is going to be in the 80s, probably 88, 89. The projected 88 and a half wins by the Vegas sportsbooks, I think they're probably going to be around there. I just don't believe in the pitching, especially long term. Like, it's hard to doubt Adam Wainwright, but I mean, he's 42 years old. Like Michaelis is a year older. I like Monty, but if he were to go down, like they don't have a stud to like rely on for tons of innings, I guess, outside of Michaelis, who is entering his age 35 season. The back end, the bullpen is not as electric as it once was. It's still really good, but it's not that Cardinals bullpen that you normally come to expect, where you have 4 guys who you rely on to get those last 3 outs. I see like 2 of those now. It's a good team, but 93 wins, I just see them falling below that this year.
Okay, so I'm pushing this question up the order. This is from R. Garrettson24 on Instagram. How much of an impact would Jack Flaherty returning to peak form have on the St. Louis Cardinals? It's everything. If they have a frontline guy, it's over. I do genuinely believe if Jack Flaherty is the Jack Flaherty that we saw flashes of in 2019, this guy can transform the season outlook on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, even in 2021, the dude had a 3.2 ERA. I know it was in a super limited sample because he's just been banged up, but to go back to 2019, it wasn't a flash. Like, it was a great season. Through almost 200 innings, struck out like 230 guys, had an ERA below 3. He was a top prospect. I remember we played him in high school. He was playing shortstop. He was running like crazy good athlete on the mound. The best athlete I've ever played against was Jack Flaherty. It's not saying much because like I played high school baseball and I'm talking on a podcast, but he is that level of athlete.
So did you play Giolito and Fried as well, or just Flaherty? Because wasn't Flaherty a year younger than them?
Yes, never played Giolito, never played Fried. Giolito's younger brother, who then gave up baseball when I was a senior, he was a freshman, struck me out on 3 pitches in back-to-back ABs.
Well, that's because you weren't very good.
I freaking hit 370. I was all league, baby. Geez. Come on. If we want to go down that route, I'm not going to be disrespected on this show.
So I think that Jack Flaherty is like a at best a low 3s guy. Like I do think that 2019 season, I always made it clear that I thought that was a bit of an outlier. The underlying metrics would point towards that. And then, kind of what we've seen since has been a banged up version of him. But the year before that, he was a low 3s guy. And the flashes, like Peter said, in 2021, he was a low 3s guy. But if he's a low 3s guy, that's a game changer for them. Like they need a low 3s guy really bad with his caliber of stuff. Like he can get a lot of swings and misses. He can be a really impactful starter as a number 2, number 3 type. So I really think that would be a game changer. I just don't know if we can really expect that. I don't think anybody is, but it's possible. And if Jack Flaherty is healthy, then a lot of our concerns go to the wayside about the St. Louis Cardinals because they just upgraded from within, and he's still better than just about anybody else there. They would have been able to go out and get in the trade market if he's healthy. So I think for them, right, they're looking at the World Series. That's what you have to look at if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, especially with what they did in the regular season last year and what their team is. Do I think they're going to win it? Well, probably not because of the reasons that Peter mentioned, but a healthy Jack Flaherty makes me really think that there's a lot better chance of them winning the World Series, and I could feel more confident about that. So it is everything to tie back to what Jack said initially.
Yeah. All right. Next question. And I think this is a question for Aram. This is from Gavin Vaughn 7 on Twitter. Who's going to have the better brother prospect? Juan Soto, Elian Soto, Vladdy Jr., Pablo Guerrero, or Ronald Acuna Jr. in Luis Angel Acuna. I'm also going to throw in Elijah Tatis, who is Fernando's brother. The only one that I know literally anything about is Luis Angel Acuna. So I go with Luis Angel. Aram, your thoughts?
Elian Soto just got signed. I've seen 2 videos of him swinging a bat, and
I was about to say that, Aram. I've seen 2 videos.
Was it sick?
I don't know shit.
No, it really wasn't. Like he looks really raw. I mean, maybe he'll be good in the next 4 years, and he'll still be 20. Yeah,
wasn't there another Acuna that you sold a card for like way more than it should have gone for?
Yeah, there's a Brian Acuna as well. I pulled one of his cards. I sold it so fast because people pay a lot of money for the brothers. I don't get that. I'll boil it down to this. I don't know much about Pablo Guerrero. He's still very, very, very raw, very unproven. Elian Soto, his swing looks really raw, and he's extremely young. And there's so much variance there. Luis Angel Acuna is a really solid prospect, a top 10 prospect in the Rangers system. He's a great defender at shortstop. The bat it's coming along, but it's pretty good. He's going to be a good big leaguer, I think. Like, I don't know if I can say that about any of the other guys. They're so far off. They're so raw. And I don't know if they're as toolsy as Luis Angel is. So I would say without much hesitation, Luis Angel Acuna will be the better brother prospect. But who knows? Maybe by the time Elian Soto can, turn 18 and be a legal adult, maybe he'll look totally different. That's the craziest part. This guy's 16. Yeah, it's a little hard.
Yeah, when I say I power rank myself third when talking about prospects here, there's a certain age limit. 16 is that age limit where I don't know shit, and a lot of these guys are. So I'll follow your guys' lead and go with Luis Angel Acuna. So makes sense.
When now 21-year-old Elijah Tatis turns it around and stops hitting 117 with a 322 OPS at the Arizona Complex,
not ideal.
I may think about Elijah Tatis. I mean, dude, 20 years old. That's incredible. Like, he's 20. He's too old for that. Nice. Pit Vipers.
Does he have these?
Probably. Yes. All right. Next one from Brew Crew BB on Twitter. It's a Rays question. Which big-time rookies will have the biggest impact among top Brewers prospects? Bryce Terang, Sal Frelick, Joey Wiemer, Robert Gasser, and possibly even Jackson Chourio. I'll just say my piece real quick. Terang is going to get everyday reps. Like, he's the only guy that's going to get everyday reps. So my mind goes to Bryce Terang. Gasser maybe thrust it in if a starter gets hurt. They are really, really thin there. Ashby is the 6, but Ashby may be a reliever this year. Adrian Hauser could be considered the 7. And like, do you really want to start Hauser when Gasser is available? And then you've got Bryce Wilson, who is objectively not better than Robert Gasser. As of right now, their 5 is Burns, Woodruff, Peralta, great, Eric Lauer, good, and then Wade Miley. If one of those guys goes down, the next option is probably Robert Gasser. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Sal Frelick balls the hell out for Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic, and Sal takes all the at-bats allocated for Garrett Mitchell away from Garrett Mitchell.
I like that. That's something that I expect to happen. But even so, I think Terang's going to be a little more impactful. I'm not saying long-term. I just immediately speaking, I see Terang as with a little bit more of ability to just get the ball in the air and then go gap to gap, and pull side power is a little sneakier than some might think. I think he could hit 15 home runs in Milwaukee, which is definitely going to really help his case because he doesn't strike out. He's an elite defender at shortstop, and you're moving him to second. I think the Nico Horner comp is so clear to me with what you have here with Bryce Turang. And if he does what Nico Horner did last year, which I think he can do, about 10 home runs, a good amount of stolen bases, an elite defense, but this time at second base, could be a 3.54 win player if he gets enough run. And we know Turang's going to get run. I think he's going to steal 20 bags. I think he's going to hit 10 home runs. I think he's going to hit for some average. And I think he's going to play elite defense. I think Turang's a dark horse for rookie of the year in the National League because, one, he's going to get the opportunity. Two, his floor is so high. And three, there's enough ceiling there where if he really clicks, he could be an above average bat too. So Turang for me is the no doubt option, but there's a world where Frelick does exactly what Jack just said. And don't sleep on Joey Weimer. He could come up. That guy has the ability to get hot and hit 10 home runs in 20 games. Like, he's that kind of dude.
I'm thinking 10 homers in 10 games.
Yeah. What?
I'm thinking 10 homers in 10 games.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm going with Joey Weimer. I fell in love with him when he was on the call up with Aram. Loved that interview. I don't know the other guys as personally. They weren't on the call up. Actually, Sal Frelick was.
For 8 minutes wasn't the same, but yeah.
I've listened to Joey Weimer more. He's more exciting to me. I'm going with Joey Weimer.
And Weimer loves Family Guy and Minecraft.
Yeah, he's awesome. This is a great interview.
There we go. All right. Who wins more games this year? An all-star team consisting of players from the 8 worst teams in baseball last year, or the Astros? This is from Nats Eventually on Twitter. So what I did, I took 5 minutes and I compiled an all-star roster consisting of the Nats, the A's, the Reds, the Pirates, the Royals, the Tigers, the Rangers, and the Rockies. So tell me if this team that I just constructed beats the Houston Astros in a 7-game series. Tyler Stevenson and Shea Langoliers as the catchers. Vinny Pasquantino as the first baseman. Marcus Semien at second. Ke'Bryan Hayes at third. Corey Seager at short. The outfield of Chris Bryant, Brian Reynolds, and Joey Meneses. Oneil Cruz is the DH. And the starting rotation is DeGrom, Eovaldi, Singer, Martin Perez, Nick Lodolo.
I'm going with the Astros.
I'm going with the Astros.
Yeah, I think they still beat that team. But is that
You're
the
going
best
Meneses?
rotation? Is that the best rotation we can think of?
Yeah, I mean, you try and pluck better starters. Also, you try and pluck a better third outfielder here. I was thinking Meneses or Andrew McCutchen.
Ramon Laureano?
I would rather have Meneses than Ramon Laureano.
There's no shot you'd rather have Andrew McCutchen than Ramon Laureano.
Okay, so I'd rather have Meneses than Ramon Laureano.
Laureano kind of sucks.
I agree, but he's been hurt.
Name me another outfielder, name me another starting pitcher, and then we'll talk.
Like, this team's not that good.
It's
also third
good.
base. The best we can do is Ke'Bryan Hayes. I like Ke'Bryan Hayes. Can't we put Bobby Witt at third?
We could. You want to put Witt at
we're
third?
putting Bobby Witt at third.
Can we put Spencer Steer in right?
No.
Just cause.
I think theoretically we could put Spencer Steer anywhere. He is a chameleon.
Okay, so let's put Steer in right. Does that change anything?
No, fuck
it
no.
does. It does.
Against the Astros.
No, with the Steer edition, I'm gonna go with that team. No, the Astros still win that. That's how good they are. Like, they are just a juggernaut.
It's how bad the shitty teams are.
Yeah, I was gonna say
no, but
like,
this is a good team. This is a good team.
Like,
I think they beat every other team except the Astros.
Peter, it's a good team.
Yeah, you're right.
But we just combined 8 teams, bro. We just
not 4. Like, we combined 8 teams, and they can't beat the best one.
If that doesn't tell you that baseball has a little bit of a parity problem at times, especially with the rebuilding teams, like, man, I don't know what will. That said, it also is a testament to how good.
Could be the other.
Ooh, Adolis. Yeah, Adolis has got to be in right.
Oh, yeah, good call. I forgot about Adolis Garcia.
But even then, like, I'm still taking it. And that is a testament to the Astros, though, too. I mean, they are so good at every position that and so deep, it's ridiculous. For argument's sake, who's the manager of our poo-poo platter of 8 teams here?
Give me Bruce Bochy still. I know he hasn't managed since he was on the Giants, and now he's going to be the new Rangers manager. But I mean, world
is it
champion.
Hinch? How about AJ Hinch revenge game against the Astros?
I don't mind that either. Give me that. That's a good one. I'll take that.
Okay.
Oh, and Bill Schmidt is the GM, right?
Sure.
Schmidt ball.
Yeah. We're just going to,
Bill Schmidt.
All right. Next one. What are the moves this offseason that you think flew most under the radar, but will make a big impact? At Larnick Enjoyer on Twitter. I'm sorry that you choose to enjoy Trevor Larnick. There are a lot more guys that you can enjoy a bit more. There are 3 that jump to my mind. I guess 3.5, like 4. 2 on the same team. And Aram and I were talking about this before we hit the record button. Is Tyler Anderson like an under the radar move? Because I think the tandem of Tyler Anderson and Brandon Drury was massive for the Angels. The other 2 that jumped to my mind were Josh Bell to Cleveland, because Bell offers them a look that only Oscar Gonzalez was giving them, and that's masher. Like, obviously Jose Ramirez can mash, but he does so much more than that. They needed a middle of the order guy, and they got Josh Bell. And the other one is Jose Quintana to the Mets. I love Quintana as the 4 here. So much of the conversation is going to be around Verlander, Scherzer, Senga as the front 3. When you get to a postseason series, you need a 4. And Quintana is one of the better 4s in baseball at this point.
No, I agree with you. I chose one from each league. My first one in the National League. Ross Stripling is so underrated for some reason. Like, he doesn't have great stuff, but he started fooling around with his pitch mix, and it seems to have bode really well for the guy. He started throwing his changeup a lot more. It was a pitch that he only threw about 15% of the time in 2021. Up that to almost 30%, made it his second most thrown pitch. And the changeup was nasty. He started throwing his fastball a lot less, worked well with his other pitches. Like, the guy had a 3 ERA, not like a 3.7, like a 3.01. And that just flew really under the radar for the San Francisco Giants. I feel like, Manoah and Gosman get all the shine, and then Barrios was so bad, so you just forgot, well, who's making the number 3 start? That was Stripling, and that was a big reason why the Blue Jays rotation ended up being pretty solid, and we saw Stripling in the playoffs too. Stripling, I think, was a great addition for the Giants, but then him going from the Blue Jays, I thought the Blue Jays made a great deal with Brandon Belt. I mean, $8 million for 1 year.
That was
dude
mine.
rakes. Like, if he plays, he rakes. And even if he doesn't play, like, he is probably such a good mind for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to bounce ideas off of. World Series champion, been there. It's a young Blue Jays team. Like, getting him in your locker room, even if he doesn't play a single game, I think he'll be impactful. But when he's going to be on the field, I still think he's got some juice left in the tank. So I'm going with Stripling, going from the Blue Jays to the Giants, but then the Blue Jays getting Brandon Belt. Loved both of those moves.
I love the Belt pick. I would have been in the same boat there. I mean, again, it's low risk, high reward. And even if he's not on the field, like, you still could get some, maybe not worth $8 million, that's an expensive mentor, but he does bring a lot to the table on top of that. And when he's been on the field, like you said, like it wasn't just that he's been good. He was playing some of his best baseball in the last 3 years, career highs in a lot of power categories. Like, I still think that's there. And some of the injuries that, they were like broken thumb, this and that. Like, I think he finally got that knee repaired. He was trying to play through it. Like, I do think that there's a chance that he could come back, and we're like, man, why were more teams not on that guy? I have a weird one, and you guys can tell me if this counts or not. I think it should, because it's part of a trade that is not under the radar, but in a nutshell, it's under the radar. I think the Brewers adding William Contreras in the Sean Murphy deal could be a game changer. We complained about the Brewers' lack of pop all the time, right? And rightfully so, right? Team with such good pitching. We've talked about the bullpen maybe not quite being what it was in the past, and it's a little bit of a question mark, but great pitching overall.
And you're playing in a bandbox.
They're playing in a bandbox, and they have no power. Rowdy Tellez was their big power acquisition, right? William Contreras has the ability to not only be their clear-cut cleanup guy, like, he will be their run producer, and he will lead them in every power category if he performs to the way we think he can. And he could be a 30-plus home run dude for them. He almost was last year in limited action. Like, that one, I think a lot of people forget about. Like, this might be the best power bat. And all they gave up was Asturi Ruiz and a couple other little pieces there. Like, great deal for them and a great pickup. Brandon Belt was my number 1 on the American League side. But I also think Andrew Heaney, I know we've talked about it in the past, I just love the upside play here. Because, again, this is another guy that even if he doesn't give you more than 120 innings, it's going to be 120 good innings. I feel really good about that. And I don't know if they use him as a sixth starter or if he is going to get a little bit more run, but that kind of similar to Belt, like he has found something over the last couple of years other than that little stint with the Yankees. And it's really just been a matter of consistently staying on the field, but he's been pitching as well as ever over the last couple of seasons when he's on the field, especially in the swing and miss department.
Last thing, certainly not under the radar, but I think in 2 years, we're going to be revisiting the Varsho for Gurriel and Gabby Moreno trade in the same way that the NBA people revisit Halliburton and Heald for Domantas Sabonis. Like, I think this is going to be the most mutually beneficial trade you could possibly concoct because like building off of Belt, Toronto needed to get more left-handed. They got more left-handed, not only with Belt, but with Dalton freaking Varsho. And then you got one of the better prospects in the game, Halliburton is Gabby Moreno, and you got a guy that fulfills a role to the nth degree, Heald Lourdes Gurriel. So There we go, man. All right, 2 more. Would you rather have Toronto's catching tandem right now, so Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen, or Pittsburgh's in 3 years? That is a developed Endy Rodriguez and Henry Davis. This comes from @Riley_McElwain2 on Instagram. I'll let you guys get farther into the weeds here. This is very simple for me. Pittsburgh in 3 years because the backup plan is a number 1 overall pick.
I guess I was going the complete opposite way, and I almost thought this question was pretty easy. You hope Endy and Henry Davis become those two. Danny Jansen, I think if he got a full-time role, would be a top 15 catcher in this league. And Alejandro Kirk is one of the best catchers in baseball. That's why I felt that the Blue Jays were okay with dealing Gabby Moreno in that deal because they know they have a tandem, the best tandem of catchers in Major League Baseball, just with Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen. Like, Henry Davis is a guy who I know you guys are in the weeds with the prospects. Aram, like Henry Davis is a guy who might be dropping on some lists. And Endy Rodriguez, with how good he is, he had that one good year, and he probably could do it again. I'm not saying that he couldn't be a potential great catcher in this league, but I think with these prospects, Endy Rodriguez, like if he became Alejandro Kirk, that's amazing. Like that's exactly what you would want. And you already have Alejandro Kirk there with the best backup. So I'm going with Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk right now for sure.
So if everything worked out for the Pirates, that could be one of the best catching tandems ever, like of all time, right? Because Endy Rodriguez is a 70 hit tool guy. And I'm not willing, like, yes, Henry Davis is falling to a little bit because of injuries and stuff. But I mean, he's got a 70 arm, he's got plus power, and he's got an above average field to hit. So it would be 2 guys that you have to have in the lineup at all times. It would be, if it to the 100th percentile outcome is even more exciting than the Blue Jays tandem. But guess what? Too many guys don't pan out, and I am not willing to roll the dice on that one. I think that you have a high floor with the Pirates because I think one of those 2 guys are going to pan out, but I don't know if I'd be willing to bet on both of them being better than Danny Jansen, right? Like it's not only that they both have to be, really good and you're hoping one of them is as good as Alejandro Kirk, which is also tough. Both of them would have to be better than Danny Jansen too, which is also really tough with how hard it is to project catchers and how volatile the position is. So while I could understand the Pirates pick, if you're feeling a little risky, which I'm shocked out of you, Jack, you rarely roll the dice. Shocked. I also think Kirk might keep getting better. And that's the thing too, is Kirk and Jansen are still young. So I'm going to roll with the Blue Jays tandem.
Kirk is a beast. He's a top 5-ish catcher in the game. He's amazing.
Okay. Yeah. But I also just fully believe that Endy Rodriguez is a beast. And like, there's a chance. I think Endy fits this modern catcher mold that we're trying to drive more towards, right? Like Adley Rutschman and JT Realmuto are cut from similar cloths. Where, yes, they have power, but they're feel to hit really good athletes that happen to catch. I think that's Endy Rodriguez. Like, I think Endy, there's a chance. Obviously, Aram talking about 100th percentile outcome. If we're talking 100th percentile outcome, you've got 2 top 5 catchers in the game on the same team in the number 1 overall pick and Endy Rodriguez.
Yeah.
I can't pass that up.
You don't happen to call Indianapolis Indians games, do you?
So I watched Endy for 2 weeks at the end. I was obviously keeping tabs on him the entire year. If I do get to watch Endy for like 2.5 months, like I did get to watch O'Neal Cruz for 2.5 months, I'm going to be thanking my lucky stars. I will never forget the 2.5 months that I got to watch Oneil Cruz, because while there was some bad, what he did on the great end of that spectrum was something that the baseball world came to see at the end of this summer. I will never forget getting in on the ground floor on that. Endy, he doesn't do anything bad. Like, that's the thing incredible about him.
I will say, looking at Kirk's numbers last year, right? 285, 372, 415 slash line. Like, I could see Endy Rodriguez being better than that. I could. But again, I'm not willing to risk it. I'll take the bird in hand.
And we could also see Kirk be better than he was last year. Again,
that's the thing,
if he ups that slug to 450, he's still near that 380 OBP, and he's hitting close to 300 while playing solid defense. Like, the only problem with Kirk is the arm, but it's still fine.
Okay, but can Kirk play a good second base while your other top 5 catcher in the game catches? You know what I mean?
Like, I mean, Danny Jansen could probably play first. Kirk could probably, but I know what you're saying. Endy is the most upside of any of the guys we named. It's just like, I already have a top 5 catcher and probably a top 15 catcher. I just have them, and they're both. It's not like they're both 34. Yeah, Kirk's like 25. I have to go with the tandem that has already panned out.
Last thing I'll say is, like, there's a scenario where in 3 years, Jack could be windmill dunking on us and saying, I told you this is way sicker than what you got. But for the next 3 years, I'm going to be sleeping soundly with Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen. And when that time comes, all right, it's okay. Yeah, I'll take the L. But I like the sound nights of sleep with 2 top 15, maybe top 10 catchers with Danny Jansen and of Alejandro Kirk.
I get it. Speaking of windmill dunking, last one. Is Shohei Ohtani the first alien to make their way to Earth? At Ant Fuzz on Twitter. I say no. He is the, I guess, second, but there are 3. Bo Jackson, Ja Morant, and Shohei Ohtani.
I'm glad you mentioned Bo, because I was going to plug this in at the end. That's the other do-over I would love to see. And again, like, I get so much of my information on 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s baseball from Jeff Conine, which I'm so fortunate to have that podcast with him and ask him about this stuff. Bo Jackson's, when he came up with the Royals with him, the stories he tells me, he said if that guy just played baseball, because I asked him, like, was he just a football player playing baseball and just like pure athleticism, or was he like that good? And he goes, dude, if he played that played baseball full time, I think he would have been in the Hall of Fame there too. And then obviously didn't have the hip issues that he had. So I think Bo is equally as insane of an athlete as Ohtani, because he had the arm too. The speed is almost unparalleled in human history, other than, like, people who train to run. But in terms of, like, football, basketball, baseball, I don't know if we've seen really anyone much faster than Bo. And then you could hit the ball 480 feet, so I think he's right there with Ohtani in terms of alien department. Just Ohtani was perfectly curated for baseball as an alien, which is, it's like an alien from planet baseball, which is the craziest part.
Right.
No one in my mind compares to Shohei Ohtani in terms of an alien, because he's like an alien from, like, beyond the Milky Way galaxy, somewhere far, like in Star Wars time, where he comes and it's like, he hits and pitches and is the fastest. I will never get over the speed. Aram and I were talking about this, and I was saying that I'd ride him to the moon. Like, everyone's saying I'm a Shohei meat rider in the comments, check.
You and Ben Verlander.
I'm unabashed. I'm unabashed. Of course.
You and Ben Verlander are very similar guys.
Yeah, we're boys. But I think the one other alien isn't in professional baseball. I think Elly De La Cruz is a freaking alien.
He is alien territory.
He's got 80 power and 80 speed.
But then you got to say Oneil is alien territory as well.
But he's, like, better than Oneil Cruz. Like, he hits the ball just as far.
Switch hitter.
I think he's faster. Like, he is a freakazoid. And it's not like you're putting Elly De La Cruz in some corner and all he does is rake. Plays short. He is a freakazoid. That's the alien in professional baseball.
Also, 89 points away, I do have to say LeBron James is an alien.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
LeBron, how about this email that I just got from my apartment complex? I live half a block south of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which is the home of the Indiana Pacers. LeBron's 89 away from passing Kareem. I just got this email. Residents, as a courtesy, we wanted to let everyone know there is an event tonight at Gainbridge Fieldhouse that will bring a high volume of traffic to our area. Please anticipate the garages being at a higher occupancy this evening, and keep this in mind if you plan to drive your vehicle off the property. It's because LeBron James, an alien, is in town chasing Kareem.
He could drop 90.
I have one more question to end the podcast. Aram Layton, in all of your years of prospect research, has there ever been a prospect with more upside, like just 100th percentile ceiling, than Elly De La Cruz?
No.
That's what we're talking about here. Just
no shot.
full upside. Not saying that he is going to work out. Not saying that at all. Just saying if you take all the best tools of a prospect and for all of them to work, I've never seen a guy that young. And like I said, I'd power rank myself 3. So I want to confirm that, but I've never seen a talent like that. I've never seen it.
No. And I go back and read old like Baseball America handbooks to see like where we went wrong as evaluators in the past, and like where, who are some players that didn't pan out? Why did they think he was going to be good? Where to go wrong? So I can apply that to now, and see how we can learn from the mistakes of the past. And no, I've never seen any write-ups, anything close to anything like Elly De La Cruz. But I still think Bo Jackson might be number 1 alien. I think you could have taught that guy how to do anything. I think you could have actually put him in any setting and he would have been good at legitimately anything. And then what about guy who got drafted in every sport, Padre? He's been drafted in NBA, NFL, MLB.
Russell
It
Wilson.
wasn't Gwynn.
No, wasn't Gwynn. Damn it. Talk about something else. I'll find this.
I'm going to see
Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield.
Oh, Dave Winfield. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Got you.
Jack, can I pose that question to you to end the pod?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a player in the minor leagues with more upside than Elly De La Cruz?
No.
For the Reds?
No.
There you go, people. 2 prospect guys, best ones I know. Never. That's
I'm nowhere
alien.
close to the best ones but Aram is very close to the best ones
I think you're right.
I'm going to see Clippers Bucks tonight. My girlfriend's first time getting the Giannis experience live.
Girlfriend flex.
Girlfriend flex,
Sick.
Giannis flex, Kawhi
Sick.
Leonard flex.
Those are some sick flexes.
Oh, Kawhi's playing?
Kawhi, PG, Giannis, they're all playing. Last
Wow.
year, when we went to Clippers Bucks, we saw no Giannis, no Middleton, no Kawhi, no PG. Robert Covington had 43 on 11 threes.
Yeah, that blows. I don't even want to see that.
It sucked.
Another sick flex, wearing your Just Baseball merch around your boys. and girls.
Oh,
That is a
Sick
sick
merch. It's in the episode description. Best way to support this podcast is to get yourself some Just Baseball merch. We have hats, we have athletic tees, we have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts. Another great way to support this podcast, just show us love by either subscribing on YouTube, wherever, if you're watching the podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole 9. If you could rate us 5 stars, leave a review about some things that you're liking about it, or if you have any critiques. Hopefully you just give a critique and rate us 5 stars. That would be very helpful. And we'll talk about anything that we might have missed. Tons of new content, of course, coming on justbaseball.com. World Baseball Classic, top 100s, top 10s, fantasy baseball, college baseball. It's all happening on justbaseball.com and the Just Baseball Show. Go check out Show and Go with Jack and Taylor Davis. They just had a great episode. I listened to the trials and tribulations of a minor leaguer. Loved it. Kind of the lifestyle that comes with it. Aram and Jack that are doing prospect stuff all the time on the call up. And if you're interested in Super Bowl picks, Colby and I's will be live next week for the Super Bowl. And then, of course, we have tons of baseball not gambling to get to. But in the meantime, make sure to download Prize Picks in the episode description. Use code JustBaseball. You get a full 100% deposit match, whatever you deposit. So 50, you get 50, 100, you get 100. And with that, thank you, everybody.